All right. Welcome everyone to this week's Whitetail and Whiskey. I think I'm all good. Just gonna double check my audios really quick. Alrighty. We got something a little bit different. We're going over on the Old Tin Cup Facebook page tonight for the live video. So if you're tuning in there, I'll be able to watch the feed here on my phone off to my right. We're gonna watch the Bullhorn and YouTube on the screen in front of me on the laptop. So that's what we're doing tonight. Looks like we are all good over on the uh, YouTube channel. We got that live up. And I think we are good over on the uh, page. Let's see here. I think we're all set now. Perfect. Just double check my audio quick. And then we'll get rolling with this. But thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. Like always, this is a live Q&A, so feel free to drop in any topics. Running solo tonight, we'll talk about kind of why that is and everything with it. But that'll do it right there. Facebook, we're good. And YouTube, we're good as well. So I'll be watching the conversation on those platforms, of course, for everybody tuning into this. Just a little quick update, I guess, tonight. Flying solo. My wife currently has COVID. I do not. I've been tested negative, no symptoms, no issues, anything like that. So I'm unfortunately living down here in the basement, and we'll see how it goes going forward. But testing, I got a mask at work, a whole bunch of stuff like that for protocol and that kind of good stuff. So, but my wife's doing well, is about as good as you can hope with COVID and everything like that. No severe symptoms, runny nose, kind of just basic stuff. So that's what I'm up to and why I'm down here in the basement by myself with it tonight. So uh, want to thank everyone though for tuning in. Though I really appreciate it. For this week's whiskey of the week, we're gonna do something a little bit different. I'm not a big Scotch guy. Most of my stuff is all American whiskey, New York whiskey. I got a lot of those up there. I'm a big turkey guy, so I got a lot of turkey. But when I was out in the Adirondacks, which we'll talk about my trip up to the Adirondacks with my wife this past weekend, some of the stuff we had going on up there, I always bring back a couple bottles of whiskey from the Adirondacks when I go up. Um, Ended up bringing a couple other ones we'll talk about in future episodes on here. But this one I was going to drink myself tonight because I'm not really a big Scotch guy, but I picked up this nice little commemorative famous grouse, which is a blended Scotch. Like I said, not a big Scotch guy, but we'll do a little bit of Scotch tonight and see how it goes. Pretty spicy, a little peppery kind of smell, but putting it in the West 6th Brewing glass from Kentucky from when my wife used to work with AmeriCorps in Kentucky. That glass came from there, so that's kind of neat. And I usually use Stones because I'm not a big fan of watering down my whiskey or Scotch, whatever I'm drinking. So that's what we got going on there. But so yeah, that's what we got going on tonight with the whiskey. Is the famous Grouse blended Scotch. So like I said, not a big Scotch guy, but this one's marriage of the finest Scotch whiskeys matured in seasoned oak casks. So that's our whiskey tonight. Is the famous Grouse, the Scotch whiskey. And I'm okay with that. Usually I'm not a big blend guy either. I don't really like um some of the other blended whiskeys and stuff like that. I usually like straight ones from distilleries and stuff like that, but that's not bad, especially for a Scotch. I mean, that's I think the only Scotch that I have on my shelf right now, but it's one that I will sip on. It's one I'll enjoy. And then obviously got a Rolling Rock and a bottle of water. So going through the itinerary so I don't have people to bounce conversation off of tonight. I know Nate's going to try to tune in, but like I was saying, with the whole everything going on, wife having COVID, he's got a between like a 1.5 month year old baby, a 1.5 month old baby. So we didn't want to risk any exposure or anything like that, even though I'm testing negative and feeling fine. I just didn't want to expose him and his family or anybody else tonight to this Whitetails and Whiskey Q&A. So that's why I'm flying solo tonight with it. So that's kind of the life update. We went to the Adirondacks this past weekend for a wedding for one of my wife's coworkers. We were up in Inlet, New York. We did a couple hikes. Had a really good time with my wife. Really, really enjoyed that time up there. It was kind of our honeymoon anniversary, I was calling it, because we went up there for our honeymoon, end of September, just beginning of October last year. So that was really cool to be up there during peak and enjoy all that time together. Had a little cabin or a little cottage, I guess you could call it, on the fourth lake there, and did a couple hikes in the area, stuff like that. So that was a really good time. Just kind of getting past peak up there. I mean, I would call it still probably peak, but it's on the backside of peak, which was really cool. But other than that, of course, while I was up there, my dad went out for a sit with his buddy Joe that hunts the farm with us, our piece of property. Both of them had really good hunts. Both saw quite a few deer. My dad actually had one of our targets. Didn't know it was our target, and that's my fault for not having a better Polaroid picture printout for him for him to be able to look at and check out and stuff like that. So now I have gone through and pulled all the files onto my phone of our kind of target bucks for that property, my grandma's and stuff like that this year. So now he knows kind of what deer it was, because he described the deer to a T, and I knew what deer it was. It was buck we're calling double wide. His shed is the one right in the middle of the cow antlers, this 5-point side. And he still had 5 on that side. He has 4 on his right, and then he also has a split brow on his right side. Pretty wide buck, probably 20 something inches inside. We don't usually get a lot of wide bucks. I mean, if you look around, most of the deer are pretty tight. I think outlaw is only like 17 or something like that. We just don't get a lot of wide ones typically. So that was cool. Like I said, as soon as he said that he was wide, I figured it was double wide. Like I say, he's 20, maybe 22. Depends on where it kind of falls. But he's a nice wide buck, mature buck. 5-year-old, I believe, this year. Not a lot going on antler-wise, but a solid, probably 130 class. But a solid 5-year-old buck, big body. But again, a little bit too far for comfort, just like me. I had one of our shooters, Larry, my first sit of the year, and about the same yardage, 45, 46 yards, and just not wanting to commit. But we're sitting kind of far back, low impact observation set spots this early part of the season right now. So we're not going and pushing into our really high production and high value stands, not really sitting bottleneck stands and stuff like that. Just because we're not getting a lot of daylight activity historically in those spots until the right time of the year, being late October, early November for those spots. So that's why we're kind of laying off of it, keeping that pressure down and hunting those low impact spots. Joe actually went where I didn't pass, but had, I guess you could say, was within bow range, but not my comfort range of 45 yards. Joe was actually sitting in the stand that I passed, or had the encounter, I guess we'll call it, with Larry, and Larry's shed from 2 years ago was up there on this far side of the cattle antler. So it was really cool. He disappeared last year, came back around this year. And it's a no doubter that some of these bucks look so identical year to year. It's really cool to be able to put the pictures together with him. I don't know where he went last year, but he came back this year and he looks really, really good. Same thing about rolling in that 130 class as a solid 8-pointer. He's got a small split brow on the same thing on the right side. Kind of seems to be our splitting side, and typically is that right side on our property for kind of a trait or whatnot. So other than that, those season updates, first 12 days. Cumulatively, we've only had 4 sits. I've had 2, my dad's had 1, and then Joe has had 1. Of that, I'd have to do a tally, but with Dad seeing double wide, me seeing the bucks I saw, I think we've seen shooters included in that, but mostly year and a half and 2.5 year olds. Again, these are long range observation spots, not really key high probability of shot opportunity spots necessarily either, but more for an observation to get out there and not put a lot of pressure on the ground, but still kind of shake off that rust, getting in and out, make sure your process is good for how you get in and out of stands and stuff like that. And I think that's a big reason as to why my hunt the other day, going right in behind that setup that Joe had. So we've hunted one of the stands 3 times for total sits, and then the other stand has been hunted once. Kind of has been just the way that the wind's been tracking lately. That one stand has been working out really good, and it's one of our long range observations. Plan on mixing it up. I would like to hunt tomorrow if this front breaks late in the day. We'll see if weather cooperates, if I can get out or not. I think it'll be really good. I think tonight would have been really good, but I had some stuff going on at the farm with Dad, so we'll talk about that too. But when I got back Monday night, I sat because yesterday and today I didn't sit because of the high temperatures. But tonight I think would have been a good night to sit. Kind of regretting that when I was at the farm, but sat Monday night. I actually saw at least 10 different individual bucks, which was really cool. I think that might be, I'll have to check my stand log data, but I think that's my most unique individual bucks I've seen in a sit. And I think that all boils back to good access and treating that property as much of a non-impactful sit setup property as you can is where you're going to keep that property good and producing. Like I said, mostly it was year and a half olds. I think there was 7 year-and-a-half olds, and then I would say the other three were in that 2.5 or 3.5 year old age range. I don't have enough history with them to necessarily say what they are yet, but a couple of the bucks I saw was, these are all up and comers, nothing on our target list this year, but we had Clipper, Clooney, and Dono. I saw all 3 of those bucks. So Clooney, Clipper, and Dono I saw Monday night, which is cool. And then, like I said, we've seen 3 different shooters so far this year, all at very long ranges away. So not anything we're looking to necessarily. We would have obviously taken any of those deer. They would have been great deer to harvest, especially with archery equipment. But nothing obviously within range. 45 is about the closest that they've gotten this year to giving us just a little bit enough itch on that trigger finger to get the blood going a little bit. So that's kind of cool with the farm, keeping everything super low impact, not pulling cameras. That's a huge mistake I see, talking to people and seeing people's updates all the time with cameras. Cell cameras are obviously a little bit different. They're in there collecting data, and you don't have to go in there and pull cards. I've pulled when I've gone in to sit my 2 sits. I've pulled cards on the way in and out, depending on how the weather is, the wind, and where I'm, exiting from based on the weather. I pulled a couple different cameras. Those 2 sits I've had in that same stand because it's such a long range observation stand, that I can get off of that very easily. It's not a very far in stand. It's quick access, easy access, all the above. And that's the other thing too, this early season time frame, if you can get off, especially with that kind of being on the edge of a late evening feeding, I usually like to get off of that stand before the end of legal shooting light if I can get off without bumping the deer in the area. That still allows me to use my binoculars and use my eyes to basically see if there's anything in the field or even along the field edge, still in that kind of dim light before gray light and actual last light. Getting off of those fields, not putting the pressure on it or spooking those deer is absolutely critical to keeping that property low impact going forward, in the future with it. So the other thing I wanted to say for, I guess, life updates is this is my mom's birthday, so happy birthday, Mom. I know her and my dad were going out to dinner tonight. I was going to join them and postpone or push this back later tonight if I wasn't trying to, stay away from everybody with, potentially coming down with COVID. We'll see what happens. This would be my 3rd go with it, so hoping for obviously the best with it going forward, and should be good. I'm not too worried about it. I've got through the first 2 batches of it and keep plugging right along best I can. So the other new thing I did was I went up this afternoon quickly from a distance and um, obviously tested negative and all that good stuff. Picked up two of the buck huts from the Huntworks guys. I picked up one of the uh, buck hut. I don't know if they're the condos or what they are. They're like the multi-person ones. Um, it's a great blind. I've seen them on client pieces. I've seen them at sportsman shows with the Huntworks guys. Dan set me up with one of them and one of the solo buck hunters, which I got the solo buck hunter put together tonight with my dad sitting, out there with me, but obviously a distance away, giving me my feedback about my wrenching technique and all that good stuff. So I was able to spend a distance time with my dad putting the solo buck hunter together tonight, talking about where we're going to put it and stuff like that moving forward. Trying to get that out here in the next week. It's all put together. Just got to put the canvas up and erect it pretty much. So I'm really looking forward to that. Going to give a feedback video on the buck hut. Hopefully Friday or this weekend. We'll see how the weekend shakes out and the weather goes. But thanks to Dan Dunnigan and the Huntworks for carrying those good Millennium products. Like I said, I'm looking forward to putting one in the field myself and putting a seat in it. It should be good stands. Like I said, I like the quality. There's some things I like, some tricks and stuff I noticed and learned putting it together that are going to be helpful. So I'll talk about all that in the video I do on it. That'll be over on the YouTube page. We'll do kind of a review of the blind and what I like, what I don't like, etc. about it, because there's always pluses and minuses with any product. I've never found one that checks all the boxes for whatever reason it is for the piece or the product you're using. So yeah, so big shout out to the Huntworks guys. But like always, guys, this is a live Q&A, just checking through on everything. YouTube, we are 3 viewers currently, and a couple on the Bullhorn, and a few over on Facebook on the Old Tin Cup page. This is new. We're doing it on the Old Tin Cup page tonight instead of my personal page. I think I'm going to start sliding it all over there to keep my business and my personal stuff a little bit more separate. Seems to work out a little bit better. I have been very busy with client stuff. I was actually setting blinds opening day with my dad on a client piece, helping set up blinds and move them into position for a client. So big thanks to my buddy Nate, who's usually on Whitetails and Whiskey with me, as well as my dad for helping me set that blind up at that client piece. It was a really big help, and I couldn't have done it without both of those guys there. So, but yeah, live Q&A. How's everybody else's season going? What are you seeing in the woods? Any questions you might have? Like I said, I'm going to kind of spitball this tonight by myself. I didn't have a whole lot of stuff planned for this because of everything going on. I almost didn't put out an episode tonight, but I figured I'd put out a, probably a little 1 hour block tonight, Q&A and everything like that. So getting back from vacation is always a little bit slow. And then obviously everything we got going on with, COVID in the household and whatever. We're dealing with a couple different stressors. So, but it's all good. But again, so yeah, drop in your questions, comments, how your season's going. My mom commented and said, thanks, Ben. The wings were yummy. They went up to Captain Jack's for my mom's birthday wings tonight. So that's always a good time. Like I said, I wish I could have joined them, but out of, kind of respect for not wanting to get anybody sick or anything like that, I elected to skip on the dinner plans with my folks tonight. So, but yeah, that's what I got going on right now. Season's been good. Probably looking to take a sit on one of my other properties that I can hunt. Mixed in this weekend, might even do a morning sit. And we got a nice front coming in tonight into tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to that front. Going to actually look at the weather and we'll see if we can break this front apart right now. So right now temperature's dropping. It's been a nice cool day, everything like that. So right now with this front coming in, like I said, tonight I really was sitting in the stand, had a really strong south wind, had a good stand that I could have sat tonight. ahead of the front on one of the fields that I'd been observing from my observation set. But it looks like where I'm at anyway in Ontario County, looks like we're gonna break up. This is gonna roll in midday tomorrow and then sharply drop off with rain percentage, but pretty heavy winds. So I'm hoping on the tail end of that front going into Friday, looks like really good weather. So I mean, you're looking at from today being 68, 69 degrees to a low of Friday morning being right around 40. You're looking at dropping 30 degrees on your temperature swing. So I don't know. That's probably really hard to see for you folks, but I'm trying to look real term into it. And then looking at it, Saturday morning going to be 41. I might push a morning sit on one of my other properties that I'd only have a couple cameras on, or maybe I might even sit one of the ones I don't have a camera on. We'll see how it goes. But Saturday, I might roll the dice on a sit with that 41. And then Sunday, got another little blip of a front coming through Saturday night and Sunday. So I actually might slip into a spot Sunday where I'm hoping to maybe have a 1 year rule magic or something like that. We'll have to check the board and check everything. And then kind of rainy next week. So this kind of little dip and lull between kind of dreary weather and then getting down, and I actually see a snowflake next Wednesday on the weather forecast. So this is your live weather hunting forecast for at least the Ontario County, Wayne County area with Old Tin Cup tonight on Whiskey and Whitetails. So, or Whitetails and Whiskey, sorry. But yeah, looking good. It's getting to be that good time. I'm probably going to push one of these sits here coming up and sit a property I haven't sat at all yet this year. My only two sets have been on the family farm. So, but Jason tuning in says we have seen 3 different 8 points, 4 point, few does, and seen a bear over Labor Day weekend on trail camera. Yeah, so I've been seeing quite a few people that I know have been tagging bears this season. I don't know if it's that we're a little bit cooler maybe than normal. We have had some cold. It seems like Fridays have been our cool days in October so far, or at least late September into October. So I mean that might be it. It might be a little bit of preemptive. We're gearing up for a longer, tougher winter than we've seen the last couple years, maybe with them being on their feet more, trying to put more pounds on for these winter months because they're going to need it. But I kind of think we're going to have a pretty good winter, and I'm kind of liking this weather pattern that's setting up for uh, going into this fall. It's a little more volatile. It's a little bit more uppy down, like it's been kind of all year. And with that, you get really strong front pushes. You get really, really good high quality sits out of that, especially some of these morning sits coming up. Like I said, I might even push 2 morning sits this weekend, especially if I'm not going to have to worry about waking up my wife if she's still in COVID quarantine and everything like that. And I'm still feeling good. Definitely looking forward to trying to get a couple sits this weekend and maybe even a couple morning sits. So yeah, that's the way the weather's looking. I would probably say evenings are still going to be pretty good. I mean, Friday you're looking at a high of 60. Tomorrow we're still got a high of 64, starting out at 58. So it's going to dip a little bit tonight, but it's going to get real intense. The wind was really blowing tonight up at the farm, but still maintaining that good southwest, which is going to be one of your more consistent winds usually. Um, as for the most part, because it's usually pushing in a pretty good. And I would rather have that steady 8 to 10 mile per hour wind throughout a hunt. You don't get a lot of back pressures and like swirl suctions and stuff like that on your spots. So I like those southwests, those pushing southwests that are really on that kind of backside of that front. Coming into that front. That isn't a huge front, but just a normal kind of weather front. Right now, we're getting a southwest one that's going to push in for this area, and I think Thursday afternoon I might try to get out. Thursday being tomorrow, and make something happen if we still got that consistent south wind and the weather breaks coming off of that front of an all day, looking at maybe an inch of rain, severe wind when that rain breaks, and they got to put that afternoon feed bag on. I think it's going to be great. I think they're probably out feeding pretty heavy right now, and this evening was probably a good sit if anybody was out. Would love to hear how you're doing, even though hopefully if you had a really good sit, you're on a blood trail right now. So, and not watching uh, Whitetails and Whiskey. So, Nate dropped in a comment: bacon chocolate chip cookies and going through freezer inventory for the present season. So, yeah, usually, like I said, Nate's usually sitting right here next to me. Kind of missing having, the whole crew like we had last week with Nate and Jake. That was a good time, but hopefully COVID can push through this week, and next week we'll be able to hit the ground running. As long as the weather doesn't look like we're going to be, um, we're maybe looking at snow next Wednesday. So the Whitetails and Whiskey might be pushed off, or we might be doing it from the Skin and Shed, or after a blood trail or a short one, maybe so to speak, next week. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to try to do these week to week, everything like that, best I can. I want to try to do one of these every week, even if it's only a 15, 20-minute quick live, to keep the content up for you guys. But definitely looking forward to this backside of this front into this weekend, and then next week, with the kind of dipping weather pattern it's got going on. Really good west and southwest and northwest next week. So get some good consistency, some good weather breakup to get some really good high quality sits in. But yeah, Nate sounds like he's living the life, baking cookies and going through the freezer right now and trying to figure out what he's going to start doing for cuts and everything in the Skin and Shed. Um, Jake Vano says, I'm trying to figure out where to sit after pulling cards and watching deer last week. It's always a chess game. That's why I like leaning on this 1 year rule. All the plots are good, from everything that I've seen from my observation sits and from doing miscellaneous stuff my dad's done around the farm. He's checked on a couple of the fields that we had some white spot fungus issues. Had a pretty good bounce back on some of the varietals. The radishes were pretty much completely untouched in the mix, which is a really good thing to note. Some of the other varietals pushed through, but I think it really hammered the purple top turnips, judging by the leaf shape and stuff like that, and kind of the foliage on them. I think it was the purple tops that got hit so hard, and that's a decent chunk of the seeding mix that I put out there. So, but we were able to seed that down to rye, wheat, and triticale is what we could get our hands on at the time, and we were seeding that right before opening weekend, and I think we even seeded some in October. I'd have to check my notes, but obviously trying to fill in all the bare spots and keep it big carpets of green. And I'm not really worried about it. My turnips will keep growing, or anybody that has turnips planted right now, worried about that frost, slowing them down or stopping them from growing. That's not a concern. You need a couple hard frosts. Me and my dad were talking about that the other day, and talking about the turnips with the frost and shutting them off, or killing them for the year, shutting down their growth cycle pretty much. And if you're not getting down around 25, I would say, if you got a light frost, low 30s obviously, but you got to get down in that mid 20 range to really knock those plants out of their growth cycles. I mean, they're pretty cold tolerant and cold hardy plants, so not really worried about that. Really liking the bulbs. They're starting to kick on some bulb production now. Got a nice, foot 16 inches on most of them, which is absolutely plenty. Not too much. My doe groups are nice and broke up from kind of the way we manage them. So not putting a ton of pressure on them. They're really spread out. We put on more food this year than we've ever put out, which is nice. It's got the deer spread out, got the doe family spread out a lot more, which is going to help and make it a lot more consistent and more huntable, coming forward in the weeks to come. Sharing the Adventures TV says, shout out from the Finger Lakes Deer Hunter group. Have you heard of any decent bucks taking a dirt nap yet? Unfortunately, we did, just to the south of our property, and again, I don't know what buck it is. I don't know. It might not even be a buck I had on camera or even knew of. But there was a really big buck hit on 31, big body wise. I don't know antler wise or not, but there was a really big buck hit on 31. There's a couple individuals that I know it's probably not because of trail cam pictures or encounters we've had, but really big feet, definitely mature buck feet. I would say 4-year-old or older. And the reason I know it was a buck is just because the rear end was still there, hindquarters, kind of the rib area, but the shoulders, the neck, and the head were gone. So I'm assuming, obviously didn't do well against whatever vehicle it came in contact with. Um, but whoever took it took the whole front end. So I'm assuming a very very nice buck. Maybe something that somebody thought was big enough to maybe do a shoulder mount of, or it was easier maybe to throw the front half in the vehicle. I don't know one way or another, but a decent buck did obviously hit the ground. Again, might not even be one that I knew of, and it might be one I knew of. I don't know. I don't know yet. Some of them you just never know what happened to them. There's been a couple that got taken during the youth season. A couple clients of mine, a couple clients' grandkids were fortunate enough to take some nice bucks during that youth season. I've seen a couple really nice ones on Facebook, friends of friends, stuff like that. There's been some good fronts and some good sits. Like I said, we've had good encounters with a couple shooters. Um, some within relative archery range, others not. Some just from a distance, or we've seen them on camera and weren't sitting that stand, maybe because it wasn't the right wind or whatever. A lot of factors, but that's the big key, is not sitting your stands unless they're absolutely right. Is how you get those opportunities at those really good bucks. And I would say if you do have one on a really good consistent food pattern, right now is when you can kill them. I think it was like the 21st maybe or 22nd was when I shot baby 10 on a food plot. Other than that, it's late season, but there's been some consistency with deer on food, but it's mostly at night, you know. But I think that means that they're moving into specific zones, which lines up a lot with the 1 year rule. A couple bucks that night that I saw Larry from the Curly, Larry and Moe Three Stooges group from a couple years ago, if you guys remember that. Larry's still around, and that was the buck I had at 46 yards during my first sit of the year, and he was actually right where he was supposed to be on a 1 year roll, right in that zone of the farm, and wasn't actually necessarily hunting him specifically. I just wanted to set that observation spot. Wasn't sitting him in a stand that I would target him in, but he showed up right in the zone like he should have. And then same thing when Dad had the encounter with double wide that night. If you look on the 1 year rule, he was in that food plot that Dad saw him on that same day 1 year ago. And I don't know if it was a blue dot day or not, because I didn't obviously have pictures of him. He was one that went missing at age 3, so I had him at 2, had him at 4, and then this year he will be 5. But for his 4-year-old antlers, like I said, right there above the middle of the the steer rack or whatever, is that 5-point side there. So yeah, he's a really really good buck, and I told Dad, and Dad's like, well, if I known he was 5.5, I might have been able to take a crack at him. And I was like, well, I said, that's up to you, but it's still a good anything over 40 yards is a poke for sure. Jake says, Nate, do you prefer soft center cookies? I do like those soft center sugar cookies and those kind of nice kind of fall apart chocolate chip cookies. So I do like the soft center ones, but I do like ginger snaps and lemon snaps, that stuff too. So I'm a big sweet guy. Sharing the Adventure said, are the deer hitting one food plot harder than another? I would say that one sit, my first sit that I had, they were definitely hitting the winter wheat more. That was a cooler night, and then when I was out Monday afternoon after coming back from the Adirondacks, all the deer were on Nebraskas. They weren't really even on the edges of the wheat. I don't know if it's starting to get a little bit over mature. I've debated and mentally whether I want to go out and take the brush hog out and take it right down low to flush it with new fresh growth or not. But yeah, so it was winter wheat my first sit, and then the last sit on Monday it was more Nebraska blends and stuff like that. I haven't sat anything. I'll take that back. The sit I had on Monday afternoon, a few deer did come out in the one clover plot specifically. $3 and 5 does came out into a section of clover plot. So, right now clover's good, cereal grains are good. I would say a green food source. I wouldn't be sitting necessarily cornfield. Um, I would be looking for green. I would be looking for something with a high moisture content. We're still dealing with pretty warm temperatures and stuff like that. So I would say something green still right now for a food source. Um, and then when we start getting, into some cooler temps and stuff like that, I know they're starting to chop some corn. But corn, brush hog corn, even, obviously standing corn. And then soybeans are pretty good. I don't think any more soybeans are green. Actually passed a bunch of farmers on the way home from the farm tonight that were harvesting soybeans tonight. So they're going to come off. And I saw some people actually drilling in some cereal grains, I would assume. A lot of people have been drilling in triticale lately, which is one of the ones that I experimented with this year. And we'll see how that goes going forward. I haven't really planted a whole lot of triticale in the past just because of the availability of wheat and rye I've had. But this year, couldn't get my hands on it. And the triticale was pretty economically priced when I got it. So that's what we decided to experiment with for cereal grain, because if we do have a lot of white spot and I really want to work this out of my soil, we're going to be dealing with a lot more cereal grain and clover blends, maybe even corn for a year or two in a couple of the plots, trying to get that white spot fungus out of our fields. So got a lot of rotating and a lot of changing gears going forward with the food plots. But obviously, a green food source is what they're hitting harder right now versus any other. And then acorns, if they got acorns, that's the other reason why I think they're on green food. They need something to offset that. Just like browse, I would call it, in their diet. Woody forage, I would put the nuts in that category. They're going to offset that with. They're going to offset that with soft mass like apples or a green food source. So I would say mass that's falling would be good. And then I could see them going out to hay fields a lot after dark. So I think some of those um, soft mass trees going, through a little band of cover along a hedgerow would be a good place to, set up for a food source right now if it's dropping. Small green kill plots, really good right now. And then oaks, I wouldn't say as much, but I don't have a lot of oak in my area, in my region. And with the gypsy moths we've had the last couple of years, a lot of people still don't have good acorn crops this year as well. So I would say green food right now is my number one bet if I'm looking to punch a tag, and that's probably where I'll go on a couple other properties. There's some alfalfa and some other crops, hay crops on some of them. I'll probably sit on areas leading up to those. Will probably be my game plan if I hunt a couple areas other than the farm. Nate says he prefers to eat the doe, but yes, gooier the better. And then Jake says we're both big doe guys and gotta love doe and milk. Always, always, always. So yeah, I love hearing about clients. I love the questions. It's always good. We double check over on the bullhorn. No comments in on the bullhorn tonight, but yeah, I'm really enjoying this. This kind of whitetails and whiskey that I've been doing. Just got to get these episodes over to Billy, which I started messing around with that the other day. It's going to take like quite a bit of time to send the files over because they're getting to that size where they're getting pretty big. So it's going to take a little bit to send them over into the Google Drive and share them over. But really looking forward to the conversations with this going forward. We talked about getting some other local friends and guests on, stuff like that. Like I said, obviously COVID threw a monkey wrench in it, vacation, and it's season, so it's tough right now to get people that are like, hey, yeah, I'll skip a sit tonight, come sit down and talk with you, talk to everybody on the live Q&A. So Jake says, been a president once. I think I'm going to hold off on being a president again, Jake, for a little while anyway, but appreciate it. I did one of Ben Outlaw food plots this year. I do have a couple outlaw plots that I did with my turnip blend in client properties. One of them severely sandy, and I will say that the tin cup mix is not a good fit on that super sandy, gravelly, like really gravelly, sandy soil. So, in that situation, would not recommend the turnips. We did plant them pretty late. We were almost to Labor Day when I planted them. But I know Nate did a couple outlaw plots on his, couple outlaw plots on a couple of his properties that he hunts because the farmer had ag beans in them. And it worked out really good timing wise with rain and everything. And he wasn't, working with the baby. So it was perfect for him to get out there and get some seed broadcasted. So, yeah, definitely those outlaw plots. I love them. I had no standing soybeans this year, so I used it on client pieces and friend pieces to test the tin cup blend. I would have liked to do more of it this year, but like I said, just didn't work. But some of the outlaw stuff, like saving the plots with cereal grains, was big for me this year. That put a lot more food back on the table that I missed having that white spot fungus outbreak. So I think that definitely saved it. And there's no reason to go into season, without a full, not necessarily as lush as it could be, but without having your food plots completely, half barren. You can still get out there. I mean, with the temps and rain we got coming, I would say rye is your saving grace right now. I don't know about triticale's growing potential, but I would dial your rye right up. I mean, I'm talking probably 150, 200 pounds of rye or better if you were planting now, maybe even more to fill in that space. If you got a bad seeding that came as a result of, disease, crop damage, over browsing, anything like that. Cereal grains are huge right now to, on a food source for deer. So Adam messaged in, my pictures have been down by 2/3 on my plots. Cereal grains, alfalfa, near all my deer activity is in the oaks, but I'm blessed with a huge oak stand on my property. That's really good, Adam. I've heard from a lot of folks that gypsy moths the last couple years have pushed obviously the acorn production down because of the defoliation on the oaks. But again, I would say with the oaks, they are going to use that. They are going to obviously utilize that. That's a huge draw, especially if you're getting more southern tier or like you said, big oak stand on a property and stuff like that. They are going to start to switch over on their stomach to browse, especially if there's not a huge amount of ag um, in your area or on your property. They're going to slant toward that because their stomach's going to switch over much sooner than you would maybe in mixed ag country, more where I am maybe, for an example. But I've definitely seen it dip. But a lot of that dip I've seen on plots as well could be a result of that could be your result of pressure, not necessarily from you, but pressure from people outside of your property coming in and hunting and stuff like that. It can change a lot on deer activity where they might go into that huge oak flat where they can see a lot farther, use their eyes to their advantage, use the hills and the thermals to their advantage a lot more. And then plots, obviously at night or different food sources that they feel safer in those dark hours. So it could be pressure relating to that too. I've seen that with a lot of people where it gets a lot of pressure in the neighborhood, plots die down, stuff like that. It could be, and this is all it takes, is one or two spooks on a food plot, and you can take it from seeing half a dozen deer a night, let's just say on a good food source, to one or none within one or, at most maybe two spooks you can get away with. But you could drop that right down 75, 80% easy if they're catching you. And I'm not just saying catching you, getting off of your stand, but if you're bumping them going to your stand or coming out of your stand, I've seen that destroy properties. I had a comment on a Facebook post, I think like a week and a half ago, I want to say, about a gentleman saying he got down after dark, so didn't worry about spooking the deer. If you're spooking the deer, it doesn't matter if you're spooking them going into that stand or coming out of that stand. If you're doing it at 2 o'clock in the morning, if you were waiting that long on the absolute extreme end of it to get off of your plot, a spook is a spook. if you're bumping deer and moving deer, in my opinion. So that's why, like I talked about, with some of these early season observation sits that I do, where I could see a lot of movement, maybe see multiple food sources from that very high observation spot. Obviously, something that's not really a bow shootable spot; it's more of a gun later season spot, but it's a spot I can get on and off of without putting a lot of pressure on it. And the one small food source that I kind of sit on where that stand location is, um, the reason that works out good is because I can see so many food sources, and with light dwindling, probably right around the old end of legal shooting, which was sunset, is usually when I'm gonna take my last look, start packing up my weapon and stuff like that to climb down. If there's no deer out and around, and that's the way I like deer to be on my food sources. I like them to be on, maybe long enough for a shot, and if not, but I like them just feeding more, passing through. And a lot of deer might be feeding on your food plots, and you're just not getting pictures of them. Like that other night when I had a couple bucks come in, would have been my first sit when I had a bunch of bucks come in. I pulled that card after that second sit I had on that spot. I had none of those bucks on my camera, and I thought that they were in front of it. I literally watched them, but it didn't trigger, or they were a little bit too far out, or maybe out of the frame after it triggered. They were a ways away from it, but I should have had some picture of them. Um, so it might not necessarily be that they're not using it. They might just be using a small corner of it, or just taking a nibble on it to offset that woody browse in their diet right now of the oaks at them, and then um, moving on to other big hay lots and stuff like that right now. Yeah, if somebody's got like a nice alfalfa clover field, stuff like that, or cereal grains starting to come up, those can be dynamite right now. Actually, a couple of the biggest bucks I saw during youth season just happened to be laying in, looked like some form of a cereal grain drilled field. So it just goes to show you they're loving that green food right now, especially here in the kind of mixed ag region of the state. So good question, good feedback, good topics. But yeah, no, I could definitely see Oaks pulling some deer for sure. But and then the other thing is too that I will say is, of all my observations on the food plots this year too, this is another good takeaway, that I'm always questioning why and trying to figure out why and trying to pick stuff apart. That's just how my brain works with stuff. The deer, when they came out on the fields, they didn't want to interact bucks and does. They're getting very much out of that summer food type use of these food sources, where it's bucks come on the field after the does leave, or the does will come back on a field, or a different doe group will come on the field after a group of bucks might leave. Most of the bucks I have seen have been in small groups, ones and twos, maybe threes, in a group. Um, and then I saw a fair amount of sparring on Monday night too. I saw at least 5 different bucks spar. One of them was Clipper, who I'm really looking forward to. He's got a really cool, unique rack. Looking forward to chasing him in upcoming season. He's not on my list this year, um, but I was able to get my first eyes on him, which was really cool. He's a really cool, kind of funky, kind of tight, kind of gnarly rack. So really looking forward to chasing that deer going forward in the future. Maybe picking up his sheds and stuff like that. So, um, but yeah, no, I've definitely seen that if you have like a lot of doe on a plot, I can see a buck's not using it just because um, they don't want to deal with that social pressure on that food source. They don't want to deal with other deer if they don't have to. Younger bucks and stuff, you'll see it more, but when we saw those bigger, more mature bucks, the 3-year-olds and the four, maybe the 4 pluses or whatever you want to call that category, the twos and threes, I would kind of lump in that middle age range, and then the 4 pluses I would put in the mature, older age class range for where I am, and then obviously the onesies, and some of the 2-year-olds are just they don't care if the does are out there or not. And the does will keep them, if you watch them, they'll kind of keep their distance from those bucks as well. So that's kind of really cool to watch the social dynamics and interaction between the deer on food sources. You can learn a lot about how the hierarchy works, or pecking order, whatever you want to call it. So, but yeah, it's very compartmentalized with deer, I've noticed, and some does. Had one for a while. Actually, I haven't been over to that section of the farm yet this year to look or have sit. So maybe it'd be one thing I do going forward. I think we got her though last year, so I don't think it'll be an issue. But we used to have a big doe on the one food plot that if there was any other deer in the field, she would walk right over there, pin her ears back, come up and kangaroo kick, and just get super aggressive with any other deer that came on the field. Buck, doe, didn't matter. Fawn, she did not want anything to do with more deer on that field. She was really territorial. So, but I think my dad actually triggered her last year, so that's a benefit because there's other plots like some of the bigger plots. You'll see a couple deer out in this corner or a couple deer over here, and maybe some other ones trickling and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we've been kind of running into is we want to see those little trickle ins on the plot, grab something to eat 5-10 minutes maybe, and then you're off, and they're off onto the big ag or out onto a big hayfield or something like that. So Adam says, issue we have here in Wellsville is we don't have much big ag, so it's tough to hunt any of my plots because there are the destination, which makes it tough when they linger on the plots. That's definitely true. If they're keying up on that late high quality food source as being your food plots, um, you almost gotta figure out where to get between the oak ridge that they're feeding on probably for that daylight browse, and then hopefully they're not getting too close to bed, too close to your plots. Would definitely say it's tough. Sometimes with food plots in those areas, southern tier, for example, a lot more success with linear kind of winding plots, wide logging road, swath cut plots. Had a lot better success of deer moving down that plot a lot better, kind of keeping that movement moving rather than just a square or a circle or something like that. Keeping them kind of going in a direction on a piece of property, can help with them with that lingering. I've noticed on food plots. Other than that, it is tough when you're in a limited ag area. You're hunting a lot more of those specific draws or benches or little finger points or whatever it might be, different breakdowns between cover types of conifer and mixed hardwood or whatever it might be. You're looking for a lot more different features rather than an A to B kind of look, which can make it more tricky, can make it more challenging, especially with access of hills and draws and some of those ravines and stuff like that. Um, Basically, like small mountains down there, obviously compared to anything we have up here for drumlins, for sure. But yeah, it's tough. It can be tough, but the A to B can be really tough too because if you get too close in some of these limited cover areas and some of this mixed ag ground, you blow out a block and you might ruin your property for a month or the entire season. Depends on how bad you blow it out too. So every property's got their challenges, every habitat and everything's got their own challenges. But I would say with those food sources, maybe making them kind of a windier, narrower, longer. I've seen a lot more success with those versus quarter acre squares, half acre squares, whatever it might be. Rather than it just being a spot, it's more of a travel forage corridor or whatever you want to call it. So that's just what I've noticed, Adam, from what I've seen on client pieces and what I've had them, find success with. Sometimes it doesn't work like that because the way it lays out, access. I understand that too. So it's tough to sometimes break down the I call them elevator pitches from people in some of these questions, but I hope that helps and maybe it kind of gives it a little bit different turn or kind of an idea for you, and I hope it leads to success for you this year for sure. But appreciate you tuning in. Alrighty, so see that's not bad. and I'm not a big Scotch guy. Rapid fire questions. All right, rapid fire. Go. Start ripping them, Jake. Whatever it is. I'm ready for them. Just start mad typing. Anybody that's on the comment board, rapid fire questions. Quick, easy topic. Fixed or mechanical? Actually, I'm shooting a hybrid head this year. I've shot straight fixed blades. I've shot fixed or straight mechanicals. It's my first year running a hybrid head. Actually, I took it down because um, I was using it with my practice head the other day. Took my one head off, put a practice head on, so I could keep shooting my bow before I go out. So, whatever you're comfortable, confident in, and you can effectively shoot with. Early or late season. For food source hunting, if you got a good deer in the area, definitely late season would be my favorite for food. Super predictable if you got them on it and it's unpressured. Late season food, gun season food, stuff like that can be absolutely killer. In my experience, over some of that early food, because we get so much shift off of crops here in this area. Might even be some mast mixed in, like Adam was saying. So late season would be my favorite over early season. Mornings or evenings? I would say this time of the year, more evening time, food source going to movement. And then coming up, like I said, with these fronts and stuff, I would say going more mornings, going forward, into that October, November. Those are my favorite times to set mornings. And then usually after Thanksgiving time frame, I'm usually not hunting mornings unless the cameras are telling me something, or maybe 1 year rule, or I got a nice front coming in, that I could sit the right kind of spot, I guess is what it boils down to. So pre-rut morning, evening for early season, and late season for food. If you had to pick your 3 favorite days to hunt, what are they? You think I've killed quite a few bucks on the 3rd/4th. So I would really say that point. I like that 3rd, 4th. So I'll pick kind of 2 periods. I like that 3rd, 4th. I like the 27th through the 29th of October. Never been a huge Halloween guy for whatever reason. Have had some good hunts, but it's never really been some of my best hunts. But that 25th to 27th, we'll call that 3-day range a favorite. Other favorite is the 3rd, 4th, those 2 days, because I've killed a lot on those days. And then my other favorite would probably be right around November 10th or 11th. And those are basically going in my memory banks into different properties or different areas on a specific property that are good historically on those days. Again, I'm a huge data guy on that 1 year rule stuff. Year to year to year historical data is paramount to me. A lot of times that's what I'm doing when I'm going to client pieces, is reading that historical sign, speed scouting it for them, breaking down their access and their habitat, and picking it apart. So those 3 favorite times: 25th to 27th of October, 3rd and 4th of November, and then I'll say we'll just call it the 10th to 12th of November. So kind of those splits with a week in between. Different spots, different areas come to mind when I think of those times. So that was good rapid fire. I mean, I didn't run a timer. I was going to start a timer for that, but I really did like that. But good idea, Jake. Like I said, definitely miss having you and Nate in the conversation across the bar and stuff tonight with everybody, with all the conversations. So we'll do 1 or 2 more topics and questions. Then we'll call it a night. Like I said, I got to run to the store and grab my wife some medicine really quick. So that's why I'm just doing a small glass tonight of this scotch. So, Jake, your message is being held for review. It says, because I know everybody else can't read this because it's being held for review. Are you a speed guy or a penetration guy? I think a good balanced arrow. I'm not really big for super speedy, micro diameter, lightweight arrow. I'm not, which can lead to more penetration. And I'm not a huge guy on FOC and all that stuff. I like a nice balanced arrow. I do like the FMJs with like 100 grain head on them. Like I said, I need a fair amount of kinetic with what bow I'm shooting. I'm shooting 64 pounds out of a Hoyt I don't know what my speed is, but I'm running uh, the 340 or the 340 spine FMJs with 100 grain slick trick on the front hybrid. So that's what I'm that yeah, my arrow wise, that's my arrow that I use. And then Nate says, "Wow, not a farm fairy believer. For some guys it works. I think we're shooting deer. We're not shooting fixed targets here in the Northeast over a specific feed or bait pile. When you need a lot of penetration or you're shooting a very specific yardage or situation like that, I think it has its place. Or if you're shooting bigger game, I think it has its place. But the high FOC stuff for a majority of it is not needed for whitetails. I mean, I've seen people out there killing them with 40 pounds, even high 30s. I've heard of people killing deer consistently with light poundage and just a nice good cut on contact broadhead with not a ton of weight because or having your effective range be shortened. But no, I'm not a huge fan of it. I shot a setup that works. It's real accurate for me, real consistent. So that's just me. If you want to shoot a high FOC arrow or a bigger upfront weight, or a lighter, speedier micro diameter rig, more power to you. It doesn't matter. I don't think, what you're shooting for an arrow. I mean, like I said, people used to sling, you know, pieces of wood and stone at them and kill them. The Native Americans and stuff like that used to sling, actual sticks and sinew wrapped bowstrings, at these things with stone heads and kill them. I think you can do it with whatever, but it all comes down to, yep, just like Nate said, shot placement is key over everything else. Doesn't matter your broadhead, doesn't matter your rig, your outfit, your bow, your arrow, what brand of string you're shooting. If you can hit that spot and get it done, and know when to make that shot with your shot placement, with the deer in a non-alerted position, head up rather than head down with some of the, the instant replay, kind of research, I guess you could call it. It's not really research, but some of the observations from some of the people, with the slow motion replays as deer dropping so much quicker. I'll put that in quotations. Dropping so much quicker or so much more with their head down feeding than with their head up because of the way their skeletal structure is lined up. When you shoot them with their head in a downward or feeding position, you would think that would be more of a time, but that's a more reactive time for that deer. With the way that structure is for that deer to dip, it's much more natural for that deer to dip and come up out of it than that deer to be up and then drop down. So if you think about it, just like a person, if you were squatted down, it's so much easier for you to hit the floor, if you were getting shot at or something like that. If you were standing straight up and you were getting shot at, it would take you much longer or have a much slower reaction time to hit the floor. So Nate says, shoot for exit, not entrance. Always thinking of the exit over the entrance. That's huge. It's not all 10 rings out there that you're shooting for. On some of these angles you get, quartering aways, steep downward angles. I mean, it's all different. So shooting for that exit is huge, and knowing deer anatomy. I know Kip Adams did a really, really good seminar on that with the Upper Genesee NDA branch. Went down and saw Kip. I hadn't seen him in a couple years with COVID, and he did a really good shot placement seminar, and I think that's up on the NDA's YouTube page. He does a whole talk on it with the Bow Hunters of America 3D deer, which has the vitals, the skeletal structure, all that on one side, and then you flip it around, and it looks just like a regular Mackenzie target. So you can actually see how low that spine dips, and how all these people say they hit no man's land. Usually you're up in the back strap, or something like that. If you don't spine that deer and you get over that spine, which there's a fair amount of area there. I mean, you got to think about it. You pull them big back straps out of those deer. There's a lot of muscle area up there that your arrow gets lost in no man's land. You're shooting them through the back strap and missing vertebrae, most of the time. So, That's the thing with it. And then it dips down so much going into the neck. You would think, being people, we think our neck is our neck, but on deer that actually dips down there, like on this mount, almost down to like where that tine is, from one of his sheds the year before. It dips down there before it starts coming back up along his back. And that's why on that front end of that backstrap, it's so nice and big. And you know, when it's not a buck, usually, um, or I take my sweet time getting up to the base of the skull because I cut that backstrap as close to that skull as I can. I want all of that neck topped backstrap that I can get, every inch of it, and then all the way down to the tail and the tailbone. So, and I pull full length deer backstraps out usually when I do them. Cut them in half and then wrap them up and freeze them. Do you prefer to stop deer and have them be alert, or shoot them as they are calm and possibly taking a step? Usually calm and taking a step, they got their head down. Um, I've shot them. It all depends on what the situation is with a deer. Let's just say Outlaw was super close. We'll just use him as an example for a head down waiting for a step. That was him, but he had a hot doe. I shot him at, I think it was 11 yards, maybe. And he was right out in front of me, like right in front of me. Um, so I had confidence that he wasn't going to be able to drop that low and in that short of a time frame. It wasn't like he was 20 plus yards out there. He was only 11 yards away, and I did shoot him with his head down, but he was um, licking where a doe had been standing. So that's why I shot him with his head down. Um, Y buck that I shot at my grandmother's, I shot him at 5 yards. I didn't want to stop him because I didn't want him to turn inside out. I actually shot him on the walk. I picked my hole and I let him walk into that hole, and I shot him as he came into that hole. Um, Let me think, a couple other ones. Bud, I bleeded to Bud. I shot him quartering away in a bottom, and I stood up and bleeded to him to stop him. He had came in on a blind grunt sequence. He came in, kind of looked on this little flat that I was set up next to, didn't see a lot, and was starting to move off. And I was able to get turned around in the stand because from where I was sitting, he was like way off of this shoulder over here. So I had to get up and turn all the way around because I thought he was going to come out on the flat. I had to turn all the way around, and then as I got back to full draw, just as I settled, I bleeded, stuck his head up, and I was able to shoot him. I'm just going around spitballing. Um, actually shot 8 ball with his head down, far shot, 33, 32, 33 yards, a little bit further of a shot, head down, and I hit him super high in the shoulder. So, like I said, these are all examples. Um, Same thing. Baby 10 was hit a little bit higher, head down. If you start looking at them, it's a little bit more of um, a common theme that I've had. If their heads down, the success rate or the better of the more effective of a shot, it kind of drops. Yeah, if you look at my not as you know solid shots, they've been a lot more head down, not paying attention and thinking. But that's more of a several years ago. I wasn't thinking. I want them more head up and looking. Um, the buck I shot with my bow on my grandma's and my outlaw plot that one year, that 8 pointer, bleeded him to stop him, and he had his head up and turned back toward me. And you can see in the video he drops, but he can't get down enough to drop out of my shot. But so I'd say the whole thing is, yep, Nate says definitely situational, 100%. Um, Super close and moving, I would say if it's 10 yards or under, I've tried to bleed at deer to stop them, and it's turned them inside out. Like that's almost too close for comfort. Um, 20 to 30, I'd say maybe bleed them to stop them. Is a good thing, or wait for them to pick their head up if you're in maybe more of an open situation. Really close, like I said, maybe shoot them on the walk as long as they're not running. Um, Y buck was on a very slow walk when I shot him at like 7 yards, so I was not worried about that. And then him with his head down, super close. I didn't dare again bleed at him, and then I shot him standing at like 11 yards. Bud was a bleat like 26, I think, something like that. So, um, and then my first buck, pretty sure his head was down as well. My first buck I shot with the bow, that 8-pointer, that's at Perez is getting done right now. Which is cool that I'm at a time where I didn't have the money to get him mounted. I have the ability to get him mounted now, so that worked out really well with that. So, and Perez has done all of my mounts, all my shoulders. He's done one of my Euros as well. He did Baby 10's Euro. And he did Hacksaw's Euro too, because I wanted to make sure that shoulder blade, got saved from where the neighbor stuck his arrow in him on his second buck of crossbow season. So, all right, one more question and we're going to call it. Just rolling over that 1 hour and 11-minute mark. So I'm going to try to finish it up here at, the 1 hour and 15-minute mark, I think is a good one for tonight. That way I can get to the store quick and, grab my wife some Mucinex and stuff like that. And, take my swabby for the night for my COVID test and go through all that happy hobbity blue blah that's going on. So, but yeah, thanks everyone for tuning into this. We'll drop one more comment and, yeah, I know, Nate. I blew well, we talked about it actually on the trip up north, so not blowing myself in. It's known. She didn't know that the deer was gone out of the basement, but she also didn't know that he was up there till we talked about it. But she knows. But all good, all good. But yeah, I would definitely say if you want a memory preserved, Nate took his 2 bucks from last year went to Perez's. His father-in-law, Dave's buck, the biggest buck Dave's ever killed, went to Perez's. And just a all-around great job. Was doing a fair amount of African animals last time I was in there saying hi to him. So, yeah, Mike is top notch. Perez Wildlife Artistry is the plug of the night for local business, and right there on Route 14, headed north up towards Sodas. I think he's, I guess, right. What is it? Right, Sodas Center, I think it is. Right when you come kind of out of Lyons, between the Lyons and Sodas in that area. He's got a sign out front with a fish on it. A lot of people assume he's a fishing charter, but taxidermist. You can find him on Google and Facebook and everything like that. But yeah, Perez Wildlife Artistry, 10 out of 10 would recommend. You can see qualities there, details there, the muscling, the ripple in the neck. I love the eyes he does in the deer. I think he does a really good form on the face. Does a lot of additives and stuff to give it that good detail, that sculpt. 10 out of 10 would recommend. And goes back to your broadhead, your setup, what you like for choice of brand of weapon, stuff like that. Whatever your go-to is, be confident and be consistent with. That's what you should go with. Doesn't matter if it's a taxidermist, bow brand, arrow brand, broadhead, whatever you can get the job done with and you're happy with. That's what it's all about. As long as it's safe, ethical, and legal, 100%. Love every bit of it. So, thank you all for tuning in. Thanks, Jake and Nate, for joining the conversation. Hopefully next week we'll be maybe on a blood trail and not doing a long Whitetails and whiskey episode. Maybe we'll be in the skinning shed. Maybe we'll be back down at the bar. Who knows? But again, I want to thank everyone for tuning into this. And actually, we had one comment come in. So we'll hit this last comment on the Facebook. I apologize that I missed it. So, Bo Hunt says, has baiting become a major issue in New York? I would say it's regionally. I've seen a lot more folks checking out at Tractor Supplies with with bags of cracked corn and the deer blocks and stuff like that. You can buy it in New York. It's not illegal to buy. It's just illegal to put out there for deer. Um, bait's tough. I don't wouldn't say it's a major issue. I don't condone it. Um, obviously because it's not legal. Ethically wise, I don't necessarily see a problem with it ethically in some of the states that it is historically used. I think it can be a great tool for harvesting deer. Um, don't really want to get into the bait debate, but if it's not legal, I do have an issue with it. If that's not what your local or your state law is for a legal or a non-legal form of hunting, that's an issue. You still have to follow your regulations and stuff like that. Um, so I don't think it's a major issue as much as some people think. I think it's a lot more um, isolated or individuals historically that have done it forever. Dumping bags of corn or whatever it might be. But it's not like some states where baiting is like I was listening to some guys talk on a podcast and they were talking about buying like I think it was the Hunter podcast talking about buying I think it was like 20 tons of corn or something like that. It was like 3 or 4 pallets of corn. Just so they can try to keep up with the neighbors with their feeding that they do of deer. So it's like, where do you draw the line with just dumping corn on the ground? I mean, at that point, you might as well just buy a semi and back it up or put it in a silo. I mean, that's a lot. So I don't think it's a major issue. I think it's isolated, and I definitely don't agree or condone it in New York. Um, unfortunately, we can't use mineral or anything like that in New York, so we got to work that much harder on our habitat management and plots to provide ample and high quality food to fill in those gaps the best we can with that. So, in areas where it's legal, no problem with it. Ohio and some of the other areas that I've consulted in, you can use mineral, you can feed outside of season. So it all just depends. But yeah. So yeah, my wife just sent me the shopping list. So I'm gonna sign off. Jake says taxidermists are like tattoos. Always go with the best. Great place to end it tonight. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Bo, for dropping that last comment and question in. Sorry I missed it at the minute. But like I said, I got to go shop quick for my wife because she's obviously in bed with COVID. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully, catch you next week on the Whitetails and Whiskey. We'll be on episode 7. Can't believe we're already done 7 episodes of this, or 6 episodes going on 7. So can't thank you guys enough for the support. Like the video, share it. Love the comments and the conversation like always. And I'll catch you all next time down here with Whitetails and Whiskey, whether we're at the bar, Skin and Shed, or maybe out on a blood trail one of these days. You never know. So with that, I can't find my sign off button. There it is. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Be safe, shoot straight, and good luck this season. And we want to hear about your success and your stories along the way as well.